My name is Justin Femrite. I am a civil engineer. Civil engineers design and are in charge of the construction management for public infrastructure and the infrastructure that drives the economy that Cora talked about. That's everything from our buildings to roads, railroads, sewer systems, water systems, within kind of those overarching disciplines within civil engineering. There's sub-disciplines like materials experts, forensics experts, seismic analysis, and different things relating to hydrology and things like that. I myself am a municipal civil engineer, so I deal with services that a city provides, from the roads that you drove on to get here, to the water that comes out of the tap, to the water that goes down your drain and comes to our systems for ultimate treatment before being sent downstream. We deal with the stormwater runoff. We design the parking lots in the parks and at the city facilities, as well as manage all of those assets that I talked about. The overall management and planning for replacement of aged sewers, aged streets, planning for capacity improvements to our wastewater treatment facility that will serve the new industrial park that goes in down south, or expand our water system between the wells and water towers, analyzing the capacities of those systems to assure that when anyone in this city turns on their water, they have adequate pressure and adequate amount of water that comes out. We keep enough water in our elevated storage tanks to assure that, as well as size all of our pipes then leaving all of your homes to handle that flow that comes down. It travels via gravity in the pipes under all the streets that you drive on to some of our low points, and we call them lift stations. It then gets pumped up, sent further downstream before it ultimately gets into our wastewater treatment plant that sits right across 169, just west of here, right by the Great River Energy Power Plant. Our treatment plant sits up in there. We treat 1.2 million gallons of sewage a day. We are starting a new treatment plant expansion based on some new limits and discharge limits. So what I mean by that is we need to treat the water that leaves the city to a standard that is clean enough that we can put it into the Mississippi River. We're regulated by the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency to do things like that. So we have to design the systems, both biological and chemical systems within that treatment plant, to assure that that water leaving our plant is clean. And we're going through an expansion right now, $16.8 million that we're going to put into that plant to assure that we're sending the cleanest water downstream. So those are some of the things that I deal with here locally, right here in Elk River. Again, putting that infrastructure in place for everyone here to use. I did go to the University of Minnesota, where I graduated with a bachelor's of civil engineering degree. I did not take any graduate school. Generally, graduate school for civil engineers is reserved for higher level the specialties like structural engineering, wastewater engineering, water treatment. Those type of specialty disciplines would go on to a higher education. As a general civil municipal engineer, a 4-year degree is sufficient. I too am registered with the state of Minnesota as a professional engineer, meaning I can sign the plans that we put together for all of these systems. Starting salary as a civil engineer coming out with a 4-year degree is around $55,000. That's a starting salary, kind of nationwide, and right in our area, it's right at that. In addition to the engineering calculations and the engineering component of, say, municipal engineering, what I do, a large part of my job is communicating with a lot of different stakeholders, from the city council, who makes the decisions on the behalf of the city, to state legislators, federal legislators, Minnesota Department of Transportation, all the regulatory authorities, down to maybe a grade school kid or somebody who writes in or calls in with a complaint of speeding on their street and wants to know what can be done. So, framing my message and framing the engineering part of what goes into all of these systems for all of those different stakeholders, and being able to communicate on their level to the point that they can understand it is extremely important in what I do. So again, it's beyond the engineering calculations and the engineering principles that you learn in school, but developing that communication and working on that from a young age before you get to engineering school, just working on those public speaking skills and being able to frame your message to the point that whoever you're talking to, they can understand you and understand what you're trying to deliver. I've heard, engineers have an ocean full of knowledge on the technical things that go into our projects. And generally, our audience, they need about a half a cup full of that knowledge to understand and make a decision around what we're talking about. So again, being able to communicate that effectively is extremely important. Typical day for me is generally spent in the office. I do about 80% of my work in the office on actual designs of our roads, designs of our sewers, and that's from detailed design to advanced planning. So looking at that next 500 acres that we may need to serve with a sewer system or a water system, understanding what that will do and how we get those pipes out there. So there's pieces of that. There's directing staff, there's answering questions on the construction projects themselves, or going out and meeting with the residents. So 80% of my time probably in the office working on that engineering things, 20% of the time in the field and answering those type of questions. The thing I really like about civil engineering, and the reason I chose civil engineering, was the ability for you to see exactly what you do. I see what I do in the designs of our roads. I see what I do in the designs of the things that you all touch. It's very, very much something that it's hands-on, and you can really get a feel for exactly what you do. I can drive on a street that we maybe designed 4 or 5 years ago, see what's functioning really well, and see what might not be functioning as well as we had hoped. Learn from that and make sure that we correct that moving forward. So that's part of why I chose civil engineering, what I really like about it.